This episode of Keys to the Shop is brought to you by Prima Coffee. Whether it's espresso machines, manual brewing devices, or general coffee shop needs, they seek to pursue the most innovative coffee products, both domestic and abroad, to offer their customers. Find out more at prima-coffee.com. This is Keys to the Shop, episode 61. You Don't Know Beans About Brazil, with Kelly Stein, the host of the Coffea podcast. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop. My name is Chris DeFiorio. I'm your host, and this is a podcast dedicated to giving you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. I hope you're doing really well today. I'm doing pretty all right. On the tail end of just getting a fourth store open at where I work as an operations manager at Center Gas Coffee. We're opening a fourth store, and it's been kind of a whirlwind getting things ready, and we're like a couple of days away as of this recording. So by the time you listen to this, we'll probably have our shop open, if not just hours away from that. So yeah, it's been crazy, but I'm excited to present this episode to you all. This is a really great conversation I had with Kelly Stein, and a great topic too. Now, before we get into that, I want to thank our sponsor at Keys to the Shop, and that is Prima Coffee. So Prima Coffee is a specialty coffee equipment supplier, and they're based out of Louisville, Kentucky. And ever since they started the company, their goal has been to provide the best coffee brewing equipment around to the general public. And their focus is on curating the best equipment for every need, from grinders to espresso machines to under-counter fridges, just the whole gamut of coffee equipment. You can find it on their website at prima-coffee.com. And there you will see all that they have to offer, as well as the resources that they offer alongside of the equipment. And these resources like instructional videos showing you how to clean the equipment, demonstrating how it works, troubleshooting it, and all sorts of stuff that will help you use what you buy from them to the best of its ability and your ability. And, you know, they just put a big emphasis on having the expertise to help their customers get the right gear to fit every situation. So I would highly recommend going again to prima-coffee.com. Reach out to them via email or phone, and I know you'll have a great experience with Prima Coffee, just like I have. And my thanks to Prima Coffee for their support of Keys to the Shop, as well as us as an industry, just providing us the tools that we need to do our jobs well. So today's episode, in a way, picks up on where we left off with episode 60 with Hannah Neuschwander, where we talked about the importance of research on the coffee plant and the farm for its sustainability into the future. And in that episode, we also talked about the way that certain types of thinking about coffee, ways of thinking about an origin, are problematic for the livelihood of farmers. Since we as baristas represent the fruits of their labors, to the consumer, we have a responsibility to get good information and to present the coffee fairly. And that means not just going on assumption. Often, though, and specifically, in today's episode, we'll be talking about Brazil. This happens where we get information that has been handed down to us and edited through various lenses of marketing and assumptions and myths and things like that. And we don't end up giving the farmer a fair shake in the end, because people decide that they don't like a particular coffee because they've been told that that particular origin is, fill in the blank with, some negative stereotype about that coffee. Now, in the case of Brazil, there is no shortage of assumptions and things that I've even made. It's just because growing up in coffee, Brazil was always kind of the coffee that was a blender, and there is much more to Brazil than that, as we will see. There's so much complexity, and to help us understand the depth and the complexity and all the things worth celebrating about Brazilian coffee is someone who has dedicated a lot of writing and now a new podcast to that very topic. Her name is Kelly Stein, and she runs a podcast, Coffea. Kelly is from Sao Paulo, Brazil, and she is a journalist by trade, really into writing and communication, and she writes for Stir Coffee and Tea magazine, as well as Barista magazine, and now she's got this new podcast. Kelly's show explores and gives a platform to the lives of farmers and advocates for the coffee of Brazil. Kelly and her show Coffea have become very well known amongst the farmers and professionals alike in Brazil, as it works to not only connect and bolster the community in Brazil, but it also broadcasts the truth about Brazil's rich variety of quality coffee and the people who produce it to the world. Now, today we're going to talk a bit about how she came to this place in coffee in her career, and we talk about the top myths of Brazilian coffee that people have about the coffee of Brazil, and then we get into what we can do in retail to make a difference and stop the cycle of misinformation. This is just an all-around great conversation. Kelly is doing a great thing with her podcast, and I think you'll just be energized. And I hope that Kelly can change your paradigm on how we approach Brazilian coffee. So here now is Kelly Stein of the Coffea podcast. Kelly, welcome to Keys to the Shop. I'm really pleased to have you here.
Actually, I'm flattered because it's the first time that someone outside Brazil will interview me. So I'm really excited and nervous at the same time.
Well, I'm super excited again. And I discovered you based on your podcast. You run a mostly Portuguese language podcast focusing on Brazilian coffee farmers and farms and the life that all of that entails. And it was just fascinating. You have some English language podcasts as well. And so I really wanted to get you on the show to talk a little bit more about your passion for this. And, before we dive really deep into that, I was wondering if you could just tell us, how did you get into coffee originally? Because it wasn't the first thing that you started doing, is it?
No, actually, I did. My graduation is in journalism. I love communication. So my business is communicate. And coffee was a good accident in my life. I tell people that coffee chose me. So I'm a country girl from São Paulo state, and I decided to live in São Paulo because it's much easier to get a job, especially in my area. And I would like to write about gastronomy. But when I arrived in the huge city, because we have 20 million inhabitants in here with a country accent, people didn't take me seriously. So I started thinking about, I need to start like in one very specific market and maybe start writing about fine tables and other subjects. So coffee gave me this opportunity, and I never thought that I would last too long because I had to do one or two news writing, especially for a website, per day. Imagine you writing news, 2 to 3 news per day from Monday to Saturday. So when they hired me, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to be unemployed in 6 months because I never imagined that someone could find so much thing to talk about coffee. And I was deeply wrong. I'm in this life for 7 years already, just writing about coffee.
Man.
So I tell people, like, my dad said, what? People are paying you to write about coffee? I say, yes. And I'm so fortunate. And so I started writing for this very small blog. It was like sponsored by a huge Brazilian brand in here. And then when I saw the potential, so I started being a freelancer. Nowadays, I write for a magazine called Stir, Tea and Coffee. I'm writing for them for 4 years already. And this year, I started writing for Barista magazine.
Excellent.
So, and I learned so much about coffee from the outside because my audience, they're foreigners. So it's really funny because something really usual for us, not new, not exciting, can be for you, Chris, and for your audience. So I'm training the way I look at our industry in order to offer this very boring things for the Brazilian audience, but can be really pretty new for you guys. So that's why I'm also very excited to be in your podcast. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's my honor. And, part of what you do is you really give a platform in your podcast it is an exciting for us to hear the inside scoop on Brazilian coffee and culture. I know you said it's boring for you all, but you tell a story that isn't often told, and you give platform to the farmers and the average the worker who is producing the coffee. What is it that is really important to you about story, about communicating this through story and writing?
Me as a journalist, I always practice to keep my ego aside and focus in the information and how it will change, even in little details, the life of someone who is listening to me. So right now, my interview, if I can change a little bit the mind or the conception about Brazilian coffee to your audience, baristas, roasteries, coffee shop owners, so my mission will be completed. So I'm really happy. And my podcast, it's called Coffea. It's my baby. It's my personal project. It's pretty new. That's why there's so much content in English yet, but my goal is 50-50, 50 Portuguese and 50 English. And this idea was born as an accident too, and from the will that I'd like to have something on my own. Because right now, I don't know if you know how freelancers work. So we pitch an idea and we have to convince our editors to buy that idea. But sometimes it's not their goal. So great stories are kept aside. So at Coffea, I take those stories and I go deeply in the information. So usually it's 30 minutes. It's 30 minutes interview. I choose only one subject and I go further and deeply to that. Which is funny because I never thought about I have microphone phobia. I hate it. So podcast was never an option in my mind. If you one day you see me on camera too, you see I can't handle. But I have some friends that they have like a geek nerdy podcast for 10 years in Brazil already. The name is Ultra Geek and it's all in Portuguese, of course. And they invite me once to talk about coffee. And so my interview over there was like coffee for dummies, very basic stuff explaining the difference between Arabic and Robusta, specialty and traditional and commodity, SCA, points, scale, because most people here in Brazil, they don't know this because the country is pretty huge. Only the big cities, big urban centers, they are learning about specialty coffee. Mm-hmm. And it was a huge success. And then they said, why don't you do yours? I say, I'm shy. I don't have the equipment. I said, you know what? We can help you. In that time, I didn't consider, but I was in a coffee farm in Minas Gerais countryside for an assignment. And I arrived over there on the 5th. So every 5th of each month, it's payday, especially in coffee farms. So the manager was, showing around their warehouses, the coffee plantations, his tests, because people take science in coffee very seriously here. So they are proud to show their labs and their experimental fields. They said, you know what? I forgot it's payday. Can you wait in the office while I sign the check? Say, no problem. But me as a journalist, I'm always pay attention to all the details. So I saw a huge line at the door of the office. The office was pretty modern, well designed, really nice. And the line of these workers, they were really dirty because they were working the fields. And they were really shy to enter the office. But one by one went, signed the receipt, and take the check. So the secretary was, because there were lots of people waiting, she was pretty fast and she didn't pay attention on the person who was signing. So the first one came, second one came, the third came and said, "Oh, mister, please sign here, take your check and leave." And he was like frozen. She didn't pay attention to him because she was separating the next check and receipts. And then she said again, but she didn't look at his face. Said, "Please sign here quickly." And then when she said for the third time, she looked at the face, said, "Oh, I forgot it was you, Mr. something." I won't tell his name. So she grabbed, the stamps ink. So he put his finger on it and then he placed on the receipt. So he did not even know how to write his name. This happened last year, 2016. Me as a journalist, that broke me inside. So, oh my goodness, this still happens. And me as a journalist, if I was thinking about to write or a magazine or a website, something like that, this person would be aside. They wouldn't have contact with some crucial information that could change his life, his production, his methods. So all the ideas that I had before of content related to coffee, I put in the drawer and I started thinking about other options. And the podcast came like great idea, and I launched it 4 months ago. And most of my audience is these people who are working in the farms, not as coffee farm owners, but the workers. And I'm really glad. So it's really funny because some feedbacks that I receive, for sure I receive by mail, comments in my website and also via WhatsApp. But it's funny because very simple and not educated people, they are sending me feedbacks on my WhatsApp with audio messages. Wow. So it shows that I'm connecting to these people. They are really thirsty for information, and the audio just make the information democratic. So I'm really happy with this kind of feedback because for sure I want baristas, roasteries listen to the podcast. As much people listen, it will be better. But those people who usually don't have this contact, it's really nice. So what they do is most of them, they don't have computers, but they do have smartphones because they are contacting via WhatsApp to cooperatives and associations. So they need the phone. So it's really popular among them to have WhatsApp groups. So my content is traveling all these groups.
Nice.
So I can go deep in the coffee production and communicating with these guys, interviewing them. It's really important. Because, for example, you, Chris, I'm sure if you speak Portuguese, you would be glad to interview some Brazilian producers.
Oh, absolutely.
Because all their knowledge, empirical knowledge, goes beyond the labs, the books, the lectures, and the workshops. So I really love to spend time. I love spending time in the farm with them than coffee shows, for example. Because I learn a lot.
Well, you're providing a resource to bolster community where they can learn each other's stories too, and I imagine that's got to be both encouraging and creates a sense of it could create a movement in that community where you're, like I said before, you're providing this platform for them to hear what each other has to say between all of their experiences, and then you're doing a 50-50 English and Portuguese provides a platform to the greater world to further understand just how rich the information, the heritage, and everything is specifically in Brazilian coffee. So what has been the most rewarding aspect of this since you started the podcast for that purpose? What have you experienced that's really just been the most inspirational to you?
I actually got a little bit emotional because it's only 4 months on air. And I went to the biggest coffee event here in Brazil, in Belo Horizonte. It's called International Coffee Week. And it's really nice, this event, because the whole chain is over there, especially producers, because producers want to be on business roundtables, and they have free lectures. So on the aisle, you can bump to several profiles of producers, big ones, tiny ones. It's really interesting. And they are following me on the social media, so they know my face. So they were stopping me, say, "Oh, you are from they don't say podcast. They say it's the internet radio station."
Yeah.
So thank you very much. It's so fine. What you said made me think about this. So I changed a little bit this detail in my farm. There is one episode in Portuguese only about fermentation. And they started make some experiments in small quantities. So it was really, really nice. People recognize me, not only the fancy pants, but the producers too.
That's amazing. And the fact that you're literally changing the way that somebody might have done something for a very, very long time. And just because they've been able to listen to this podcast and hear some more information in that platform, they've changed something that could have such a big impact on their future.
And especially I want to inspire the young generation, because I don't know if this happens in other producing countries, but the children, they saw a miserable life of their parents, that they don't want to be in land. They don't want to produce coffee. So the parents are making huge efforts to give education to these children, and they go to the city. The point is, what I want to connect through Coffea, through my podcast, is, hey, hold on, because you are not just the child of a miserable coffee producer. Actually, you are a business person. You have a company. Start looking at your property as a company to improve not only quality, but the way you manage financially this company, that you can reach the whole world. So it's really interesting how these young minds are changing to their subjects. Some started studying English, and they said they sent an email, "Oh, I'm practicing my English with your pet podcast." So say, "Oh my goodness, my English is terrible, bad accent. Don't do that." Yep. I will send your podcast link to practice the English. And interesting, another innovation that I'm trying in my podcast, but I'm not sure if it's going to work. I'm focusing in the public response. So my main sentence is, do you like the content? If you like the content, you can make some subscriptions and you can contribute with $1, $2, just to help with the expenses of the podcast, because it's complicated, because I rent a studio. I still don't have all the equipments like you do, like a recorder, a professional one. Mm-hmm. So some people are helping, actually. So what I think is to do some exclusive events for these people too.
That would be a great idea. I wanted to switch gears a little bit here and talk about the fact that you're already changing minds. You're already well known in now the coffee producing community in Brazil, and because of reaching out to an international audience, you also have a platform across the world because you have this podcast.
Yes,
part of the way people view coffee in general, I would say, is largely based on marketing or hearsay or assumptions. And I have personally said things or thought things or heard things about Brazil almost more than any other origin out there. And there's a lot of misconceptions about Brazilian coffee. Give us some ideas of what are some of the biggest misconceptions about Brazilian coffee that you really want to set straight for folks.
Really, really interesting question, because I'm traveling a lot too, and I listen oh, you're Brazil? Oh, and I listen some really weird stuff that drive me crazy. As you said, marketing is really important, especially if an origin is trying to sell abroad. In my opinion, since the beginning, Brazil didn't prioritize marketing. We are like the coffee nerdy, you know. We want to do some experiments, some tests. So the governmental money was invested in science coffee technology. Just to give an idea, we have more than 130 years of coffee science tradition.
Wow.
67, for example, 67 commercial varieties were developed here in Brazil, in Campinas, in the countryside of São Paulo. So most people didn't know that. So Mundo Novo, Caturra, Ubatã, people, I'm sure you heard about it. And this is not the product of nature. Actually, it's product of a lab. Mm-hmm. People were doing and thinking. In the past, they are thinking about productivity, and then the second phase was controlling disease and plagues. And right now, the coffee science are going crazy to quality.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of
and
sense.
using as base like the SCA points graduation.
So that's kind of like your third wave for coffee farms. The first wave of productivity, second wave of disease resistance, and then now there's this focus on quality.
Exactly. So what I listen regularly is, I don't like Brazilian coffee because they are mechanic harvested, mm-hmm. and mechanic harvest is not good. It's when I listen to this, I'm not sure if people really go through and think about what they are saying. Let's say, did you try this coffee first of all, before saying if it's good or not? We Brazilian, we are focusing on quality and consistency. And we are studying coffee for more than 100 years. So it's natural that we develop machinery, technologies, new varietal. This, first of all, to improve coffee according to their standards, because in the past was productivity and now it's quality. So the machinery was especially designed and think about to get most of the coffee tray. And with this technology, the life of the producer is easier and it's better. So this is one concept of sustainability, mm-hmm. right? If we can improve the product and also improve the quality of this producer, it's a win-win relationship.
Makes sense.
And there are some crazy stuff going on here in Brazil, like machinery that can select the real mature cherries that the eye cannot see. So really, the hand pick is really better. Do you really believe that some producers in Africa, if they had money, they wouldn't buy some machinery to make their lives better?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm sure they would. And especially, for example, I heard this is very exclusive information for you. Colombia, the region of Antioquia, is investing a lot of money in machinery from Brazilian technology. So probably in January, February, they will be with very good stuff with technology to make not only the coffee better, but also the producer's life better. And it's funny because usually when I go to very international events, the very hipster baristas, very modern, they are really proud to talk about their espresso machines, which is really modern, do this and that, controls pressure, temperature. It's really nice. Or roaster masters talking about the very high-tech roasteries, roast machine. Why it would be different for producers? So if it enhances the sensorial profile, let's do for it.
So it's in the cup, it's in the taste to prove whether or not that is a viable option. Obviously, if it was making terrible coffee and it wasn't producing a sustainable environment, then you're the ones with a livelihood on the line. So it makes a lot of sense when you put it that way. It's maybe very easy for us to hang on to these little bits of sound bites that we hear about mechanical harvesting. That's really interesting.
It's really nice. Don't talk about Brazilian coffee, because we have 14 pretty different coffee regions. But when I'm saying different, they are literally very different. So, and this can be enhanced by the processing, post-harvest processing, or they are applying fermentation techniques or not. So it's really interesting. So when someone talk about, I had this terrible Brazilian coffee, just ask this person, where is it from? Which region? What is the post-harvest technique? Because when people start tracing that, it will make more sense, because we are a continental country. So for sure there are terrible coffees, but because some people, they don't do their homework. But I can tell that the specialty coffee industry here is pretty aggressive, and they are doing an awesome work, and I'm really proud.
So we're still trying to overcome this idea that Brazilian coffee has a particular flavor profile. And I know when we were talking before this episode, you're talking about people coming in for these these competitions, and they're cupping Brazilian coffees, and they are tasting them like not even believing that it could have tasted that way because it was Brazilian coffee.
Exactly. People say, this is from Kenya. This is from Ethiopia. Oh, no, this is a very good washed coffee from Colombia. But actually, because we do a blind tasting, especially in the international events, it's blind tasting. This is South America coffees. Let's try. And people just go crazy because the whole table was Brazilian and they were pretty different from each other. So what is happening and changing producers' lives is local quality contests. So they have like in region, in the state, and in the country. So different institutions are promoting that. And it's really nice to see, because they are paying better money for the bag. All the producers are interested to that. They don't want to be a hostage of the stock market. And I believe that maybe in 15 years ahead, the industry will have problems to find bad coffee, because I don't believe that producers will sell good coffee for bad prices anymore in 15, 20 years. I don't think so. So maybe the industry will have a problem. And what is funny is the most important coffee quality contest is Cup of Excellence, because it's international. They bring international judges. And this year I was over there. It's really funny to see the reaction of the judges. People are like, what, you sure? So it's really rewarding. And there are some traders, Brazilian traders, they are promoting their internal quality contests to search for unique coffees to sell to their clients in another country. So producers right now, they are happy because they have different options for specialty. And if their coffee or their lot is doing great, they will definitely make more money.
Yeah. So what are some other of the big misconceptions out there about Brazilian coffee?
People believe that Brazil has only huge farms, which is not true. 86% of Brazilian producers are small farms. What does it mean for Brazil? Small farms are less than 20 hectares. in the average, they have 7 hectares. So please, we are not huge producing. We are not that huge. And Brazil produces only Robusta. Not true. Because 20 years ago, there was no Robusta in the country. It was 100% Arabica. And it started, the coffee, the Robusta farms started because the soluble industry asked for that, demanded this type of coffee. And pretty new, the crazy scientific coffee guys, they are now developing the specialty Robusta. So very soon you're going to start hearing something about it. And the last that it's my favorite is Santos Coffee. Guys, Santos Coffee doesn't exist. Please take this information out of your coffee menu. It's really annoying. Brazilians are tired to see that.
What is it? What is that? Where does that come from?
Santos actually is the port. It's a city in the countryside of São Paulo state. So it's our exit door for the world. So what happened in the past is the very good coffee was leaving from Santos port, and bad coffee like phenolic was leaving Rio de Janeiro port. So people around the world, they said, oh, Santos coffee is really good. Oh, so I will sell Santos coffee. But they don't plant coffee at all over there. There's no one single coffee plant over there. It's just the port. So please stop doing that too.
There are so, I love how much we're learning here. This is really fascinating. And it's also slightly depressing because it shows just how much of an impact one decision or one rumor or assumption can have as it spreads, internationally, and people base their buying decisions on this stuff. And when we're talking about things like the retail world, for instance, coffee bars and folks that talk to consumers about coffee all the time, I wonder what you would say are some examples of how you've seen that lack of understanding of proper understanding of Brazilian coffee has negatively impacted coffee farms.
It's really complicated, and I think it's the actual challenge for the Brazilian coffee industry to fight against the negative marketing, because it's really easy to say something bad and this is spread like crazy. So just the lack of information, it's really terrible. So someone that sells Santos coffee, it's terrible because it is disrespectful with 14 different regions. It's disrespectful with the coffee scientists. It's disrespectful to the traders because they are doing a very good job just picking great micro lots and lots for their customers. So I think the main thing that summarized our whole conversation is the lack of information. So when you listen someone telling, oh, Brazilian coffee is terrible, you can ask, based on what you're telling this? So I think it's the first step.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because otherwise, it's easy to keep on doing what you've been doing, and learning oftentimes is difficult, and it means sometimes admitting that you are wrong, which is painful to do. Especially if you realize the gravity of the situation. So given that there's all this misinformation out there, especially as baristas and people who work in coffee shops, they're not as connected to the information as roasters. And even roasters oftentimes have to rely on importers. What are some of the things that we can do on the ground in retail to fix these things and take some steps to really give Brazil a fair shake and positively impact on the farm level?
First of all, my suggestion is learn about these 14 regions. If there is no book or no article about them, start questioning your importer. So the guy who is bringing the coffee for you, Start asking them good questions about this lot and the other ones. Another thing is your best friend will be your importer. So he is your connection with the origin. Start not thinking about only the regions, but asking about different projects, or different and unique lots. Because these unique lots, they are really unique. They can be expensive, but they are really unique. So I know lots of places, not only in the US, but Europe and Australia too. They are buying these very expensive lots and they put in their coffee shops as a showcase. So they are teaching their clients that Brazilian coffee is not that bad too. Mm-hmm. So because it's the whole chain. Doesn't matter if the barista said this is good Brazilian coffee, but the client won't pay good price for that cup.
Right.
So it's a teamwork everywhere, and communication and information is our bridge. So studying these origins, pay attention to quality contests, not only the international ones, because the prices of Cup of Excellence are crazy. Today was the auction of Pulpwood Natural. It was just, I don't remember but it was the record. It's really crazy.
Neat.
And very important tip. I am aware of regions and coffee farms who would open their houses, their farms, to receive you guys for free. So if you pay your plane ticket, they will catch you at the airport, pick you up at the airport, and show the whole work, the structure, the tests and everything. Wow. I'm sure that, for example, Cerrado Mineiro is really aggressive with that. So if you are really interested, you can write an email and I connect to the coffee producers, because they are aware that we are struggling with this negative marketing. And the real way to fight with that is information and showing. Because marketing, there is this bad side, because you can tell a story. And we like to show the story because we are not lying, It's really nice. What I like to say is, some people say, especially customers in the coffee shop, they said, I'm going to buy this coffee because I'm going to help the life of this miserable producer. In Brazil, we don't do that. This guilty marketing, we don't do that.
Right. Well, it's dehumanizing in a way, isn't it?
Exactly. We don't like this guilty marketing. It's just coffee. Mm-hmm. Guys, be fair and focus on the coffee.
Yeah. And you're talking about paying attention to the contests, the quality contests. A lot of times people get lost in focusing only on the top one or top two. And I know that online, through different Twitter conversations I've seen happen around this, there are so many great coffees that are not like 97s or 96 point coffees.
Exactly.
They're 90s, they're 88s, they're 89s, or even below. I've had amazing coffee. The score is relatively arbitrary when you consider the cup quality as the final arbiter of whether or not it's specialty coffee or really good coffee. So
it's really interesting point, because some Japanese judges at Cup of Excellence, they have different views of an American judge. It's really interesting because the Japanese will focus in their clients' preferences, but it's pretty different from Australia, Europe.
So they come representing, they're almost like a politician, representing their constituency. Yeah.
I never thought about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
My last advice is listen to Coffea, my podcast, and you learn lots about Brazilian coffee.
You will. Absolutely. I certainly have. And I love that it is, giving a platform for these stories, for these farmers, and also educating us outside of the producing countries, getting over these misconceptions about Brazilian coffee. And you know what? As you do that, as those stories do that, I feel like it starts my mind thinking, well, if I have misconceptions about Brazilian coffee, so might I also about other coffees. And it might just open our minds up to think differently about coffee in general.
Perfect. Yes.
Excellent. So where can people get in contact with you? How can people find your podcast, et cetera, reach out to you?
So the link is portalcoffea.com. It's portalcoffea.com. And on the website, you are going to find all the social media. Lots of backstage is going on, especially in Instagram. And my email is Kelly, not very Brazilian name, I know. So KELLY @portalcoffea.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for dispelling some of these misconceptions about coffee and talking about all of the work that you're doing on your podcast. It's really just inspiring, and I can't wait to see just more episodes coming out, and wish you all the success in the world.
Thank you very much. It was an honor. Thank you. I'm really happy. And if you have any doubts about Brazilian coffee, anyone who is listening to this podcast, you can hit me the questions and I can make a podcast about it.
Hey, that's a great idea. Always a good idea to reach out and ask questions. Well, walking away from this conversation, I just kept on thinking, we can't just accept what we hear to be accurate 100% of the time. When we look to learn about coffee, we have to receive information and verify that it's actually true. So many of those myths that Kelly was talking about are things that just kind of became an assumption about the country and people in powerful positions, people who can buy tons of coffee. They receive those bits of information and it goes unchecked. And then let's be honest, when we think of Brazil as a coffee, we often do think first of the assumptions that we have picked up along the way. We can think of it as certain flavors that are poor or middling at best, a blender coffee. So these assumptions get recycled and repeated often enough and then handed down from person to person in the industry that it causes us to basically overlook Brazil or just accept it as it is what it is. And we don't give to it the kind of curiosity and the kind of fervor that we give to other quote unquote in origins. If we want to see sustainable change, it makes sense. It would behoove us to start questioning the assumptions about it and exploring the possibilities within that country that many consider a flyover coffee. The opposite can also be true here. Our positive assumptions can limit a coffee-producing country and pigeonhole them into a narrow window of flavor that we like today, but who knows in the future. And we touched briefly on that in the episode prior to this with Hannah Neuschwander. But you know what? This talk with Kelly provides with us today with a call to curiosity, a call to really see for yourself, taste for yourself, think for yourself. Don't just accept the assumptions that have been handed down about Brazilian coffee. She pointed out that Brazil is a leader in agricultural science, and with 14 growing regions, they have such a variety of excellent coffees that we'd be shocked to think they're Brazil. So some of the things that Kelly talks about us being able to take action on from where we sit as people on the retail end of the value chain is we should really learn about the regions of Brazil, the 14 growing regions. And if we don't have the information readily available, just talk to your importer. They have a lot of relationships. They have a lot of information. Ask them about special programs, special projects. There's always something going on. Whoever you're using as an importer is just going to have a lot more information readily available than you might. And so it's worth taking advantage of that relationship for sure. And the other thing is to pay attention to contests, things like Cup of Excellence, for instance, where you have people competing with the quality of their coffee. And often, as she said in this episode, people are surprised at the coffees that come out of these competitions. They tend to transcend the assumptions about what that particular producing country is capable of. And then I love what she said about focusing on the coffee, and don't buy coffees just because you feel guilty like you're going to come in and help the poor and miserable farmer. Like we have this savior complex about the way we purchase coffee. Focus on the coffee. Focus on, like Hannah Neuschwander was talking about in her episode, and Kelly mentioned here as well, these are business people. These are businesses. These coffee farms are legitimate businesses being run by business people, and they deserve, and more so, a seat at the table, the same as we would give to any other business person that we're doing business with. So now there are some things that we can do, a few among many, and just like Kelly is doing with the Coffea podcast, by doing these things and just replacing our assumptions with curiosity, we open up the door and provide an opportunity and enable the building of a platform for Brazilian coffee and all coffees and the people who produce it. So my thanks to Kelly Stein for her work, her podcast, and her writing telling the story of Brazilian coffee. Really appreciate it and cannot stress how important that work is. Really feel informed here after listening to this, and there's so much more to learn. So if you want to learn more about Coffea podcast and Kelly and her work, you can go to portalcoffea.com. That's spelled portalcoffea.com. And of course, you should subscribe to her podcast, Coffea, and listen to those episodes. She has some really awesome episodes in English. We'll be linking to those in the show notes here, and we'll be looking forward to seeing more episodes in the future. So a new thing here at Keys to the Shop is we have an opportunity when you go to keystotheshop.com to sign up for a weekly email of the show notes to your inbox. Now, the show notes for each episode contain the key takeaways and the key points from that episode, and just organized and curated for your benefit. They have all of the links and resources mentioned in that episode, and what this is meant to be is something that you can take and apply to your career, take and apply to your shop, and help you grow as a coffee service professional, which is part of the mission of Keys to the Shop. So real easy, just enter your email. You'll get a little greeting email, and each week as a show is produced, you'll receive the show notes automatically. Also, within that email will be exclusive content just for people who subscribe as it becomes available, as well as interesting links to things that I come across during the week that I think would be able to help you in your professional journey in specialty coffee. So if that sounds good to you, then go ahead and sign up to have those keys delivered right to your inbox. And yeah, I really appreciate you taking time to listen to the show today. Go and have an awesome week and apply this information, and I will see you here next week. And I hope that this episode, I truly hope that this has provided you keys to the shop.